First of all, Tony Awany is my name, Member of Parliament representing the people of Noaya County and the Deputy Chair of the Physical Infrastructure Committee. The questions and concerns that were raised by the members of Parliament on the Budget Committee summarized the content of my report. First of all, government has come up with a list of bridges to rehabilitate, a list of roads to rehabilitate. The Budget Committee particularly was interested in having those lists of roads earmarked for upgrades and rehabilitation, and also the list of the roads to ensure equity, because members were not very satisfied, because they're suspicious that maybe this list of bridges could have been skewed to one region. So as chair of the Physical Infrastructure Committee, I made commitment that before closure of business today, we shall provide the lists of all those roads and bridges that have been earmarked for upgrades. Then also in my report, it clearly contains all the major projects, infrastructure projects, that government has come up to work on. Of course, I may not mention all of head, but there are big projects like bridges. We have got the Laropi Bridge, which is earmarked for upgrade, for construction. The Masindi Port Bridge is also there. Then the Bukasa Port. The issue of the Bukasa Port has been on the issue of compensation of the project affected persons. Because I think the money that has been put aside for developing the port is about 7 billion. But if you see the money that has been earmarked for the compensation of the project affected persons is actually more, several times more than the money that has been earmarked for the construction of the port itself. So the issue of the project, compensation of the project affected persons is one thing that my report made recommendations on, but the members of the Budget Committee are not very at ease with that. They're saying it is not really prudent, it is not logical that you spend more money, 120-something plus billion for compensation, and yet money which has been earmarked for the project itself is only about 7 or 10 billion. I think it was Honorable Semuju Nganda who raised the issue. If you clearly followed the presentation, my presentation on the floor of Parliament, I clearly stated that there were some delayed projects of government. And the recommendations we made was that government should expedite the process of completing this project. So the Ginger Expressway is one of such delayed projects. Of course, the external financing is there, but there's a challenge with the counterpart funding by government, which we also made recommendations for government to make provisions for. And then particularly, there was an issue of the unit cost of road construction. There has been a lot of disparities. It has never been harmonized. So you had members of Parliament members of the Budget Committee raising an issue that have you ever bothered to try to find out from the minister over the issue of the unit cost of road construction? Of course, the answer that was provided to the committee by the minister was that the Ministry of Works and Transport had commissioned a study to come up with this standard cost for the unit cost of road construction. I think they are done with the survey. We look forward to seeing them release the report that will clearly state the unit cost of road construction. The issue of the relocation of the Ministry of Lands offices to pave way for Parliament to probably acquire that for their offices actually was generated from the floor. The issue came from Parliament. And the ministry, of course, the government, of course, the Ministry of Lands, of course, had to come with that in their budget framework paper. And they made requests that, if possible, 127 billion be availed for that process. So it was an issue that came from Parliament, and as a committee, we did receive the recommendations from the Ministry of Lands in as far as that allocation is concerned. we raised that issue of the relocation to, they call it the government campus, the ministry campus in Webaja. So the committee also raised that issue. What particularly do you want to do with that money? And yet government is trying to earmark some money. I mean, the government is trying to develop the ministry campus at Webaja. Those issues came up in our discussions at the committee level.
So how much have you provided for the completion of that?
You see, we raised it as a concern to the ministry. And then the ministry made commitment to come back because they did not satisfy us. And that's the same response I gave to the budget committee, that as the chair of the physical infrastructure committee, I will make commitments to make sure that I make a follow-up and furnish them with better information.